Hello there.
How do you do? Normally we talk about Lord of the Rings. Today we'll be doing something a little different. That's right. Today we'll be talking about world building and how integral it is to storytelling. Indeed, world building is very important in any story that you write, no matter how advanced or simple. In fact, it's so important that even the most simple of shows, series, television, and even books have at least some world building involved in them. It is the history of your world, and without its history, your world is as flat and as two-dimensional as a piece of paper. So, what is world building? How do you do it right? And how do you use it effectively in order to capture the attention of your audience? That's what we'll be talking about today. Well, first things first. No matter what world you're building, you need advanced history behind it. Not too advanced, but something, some sort of substance. Even a series like Adventure Time, for example, has some world building to it. You see, in the show, it's very episodic at first, very simple, and all these fun little hijinks between Jake the dog and Finn the human. But as the show advances, you learn more about the mythology and the mythos of this world. There were monsters at the beginning of time, there are beings beyond comprehension, there are powerful gods that want to destroy this world. You learn about Abraham Lincoln, you learn about the end of the world, how humanity was destroyed. There is laws and rules to this world, no matter how unruly it may be. And that is very important in storytelling. You need to have events behind your world story in order for it to make sense, no matter how crazy and kooky your world may be. Another integral part of storytelling is tying your stories together and making sense of the events that you name. You see, in Lord of the Rings, and I said I wouldn't be talking too much about it, but I have to bring it up for a point. In Lord of the Rings, there are a lot of names thrown out there. Isildur, Sauron, Morgoth. The list goes on and on and on, and Calagan the Black. But instead of just giving you words that really mean nothing to the reader, it instead makes sense of those words. Isildur was the one who cut off Sauron's fingers, and obviously the ring off of Sauron's hand. Sauron was the powerful sorcerer who was beneath Morgoth, and Morgoth was the Dark Lord imprisoned in a space beyond time. And of course, Calagan the Black was Morgoth's most powerful dragon. Tolkien's stories make sense of these names, these words, these characters, these creatures, but a lot of stories don't. As much as I adore Dungeons and Dragons Honor Among Thieves, I have to admit there was a lot of moments where they just sort of name-dropped a creature without explaining the significance of this thing. Yes, I personally know what a beholder is, but most of the audience doesn't. So when a character says that someone killed a beholder, no one knows what that means. They don't know it's this mythical many-eyed monstrosity beyond time and space. They don't know what it means. To name-drop places and things that only a select few people know, or nobody knows, hurts your story more than anything. It makes it feel hollow and shallow, as if you're just throwing names out there to fill time and space. That would be like if Lord of the Rings started without the opening sequence and just jumped straight to Galadriel, without any explanation of Sauron, and you just name-drop the character every now and then. That's what it would be like, and it would be massively disappointing to say the least. You have to explain your world and events, otherwise it just feels like you're filling a page or filling space in your story just for the sake of wasting the reader's time. And that's the key thing. You never want the reader to feel like their time is wasted. You can take your time fleshing out characters, you can take your time with the story, but it should never feel like a waste of their time. They should never feel like it's a laborious task to finish a story, or if they're just bored out of their mind from hearing random things without explanation. You have to give them a reason to keep going. You have to earn their attention. It isn't gifted to you, and you have to keep that attention. Another integral part of world building is keeping your world consistent. If you're constantly breaking the rules of the world that you have created, it won't make any sense. Take Pacific Rim, for example, and yes, this is for every single property on the planet, no matter if it's fantasy or science fiction. If you are constantly breaking the rules of your world, it won't work. Pacific Rim Uprising versus Pacific Rim. Pacific Rim, everything is slow and strong. Every movement breaks the earth, and it takes forever to wind up because of the weight of each creature. Yet in the second film, everything moves like a human being. The entire logic of the world has been broken, and nothing makes sense. Scale doesn't make sense. Everything just feels like massive humans instead of automatons. It doesn't work, and it breaks the entire logic of the world, thus making it unbelievable for someone to put themselves into this world. If you cannot immerse someone into the world that you are creating, you have failed, and that's very integral. Stories can't break the illusion. Take Sherlock Holmes, for example. There isn't a moment in these movies, shows, or really any content I can think of Sherlock Holmes where you don't believe he is a mastermind, where he is a genius. The way that the character acts, the way his mannerisms are portrayed, he is constantly showing you just how superior his intelligence is. There isn't a moment where I believe he is just some actor playing a character. He is consistently in that role. The logic of the world is not broken. He is intelligent, and he stays consistently intelligent. He does not do things that he would not do. He is consistent with his character, and that is important. If a character is strong out of nowhere, like in the Willow remake show, or if a character is just uncharacteristically dumb or does something that they wouldn't do, it doesn't work. Merry and Pippin are kind of buffoons, so it makes sense that they're the ones causing mischief, trouble, and issues to happen in the story, because that's who they are. That's their character trait. They're clumsy, they're buffoons, they're silly. They do things stupidly sometimes, but they have hearts of gold. And that pushes the story forward in a believable way. There isn't a moment where they're just uncharacteristically intelligent about everything out of nowhere. They are consistent. Consistent characters, consistent world, and consistent logic keep your world building tight and strong. If you don't do that, it'll fall apart. Another integral part of storytelling and world building is proper follow-through of events. For example, Lord of the Rings, I know. Don't worry, I'm just using it as one of many examples. All of the events tie together perfectly. In the Fellowship, they have to go to the mines of Moria because every other path is too dangerous. When the Watcher in the Water attacks, it forces them deeper into the mines and they cannot escape. They have no other option. That's why they take the mines of Moria. That's why the Balrog kills Gandalf and he becomes Gandalf the White. That's why all the events happen the way that they do, because they had no other choice and it was properly and methodically placed in that way. The creatures don't feel like a story device to force you into a situation. It feels natural because they don't have any other option, so it's believable they would go through the most dangerous path that's left. Now compare this to the Rings of Power, the dark forest that they enter with this giant bobbit worm creature. The creature immediately swallows them, and then they survive. Nothing meaningful happens here. All it is there for is to show that the forest is dangerous, but we already knew that. It doesn't cause any issues. They could just leave the forest at any time. It doesn't push the story forward in any meaningful way. It's just there to show, ooh, look, CGI monster. It's not helpful. It doesn't push the story forward. If this creature somehow separated Isildur and the gang, then that would be more interesting. Then the elf is separated from Isildur, and we know Isildur has to survive, and we don't know how this elf survives, so there's risk involved. There's stakes. It's not perfect, and I know it's not the best example. I just came up with it off the top of my head, but it's something. It's better. It's something at least. There has to be a reason for the events to happen. They need to be meaningful. Your story events have to push the story forward. And again, if the characters are acting in unbelievable ways that are like them, then the story falls apart. Another thing that tends to hinder story building and world building and honestly overall interest in your stories is predictability. If your characters and events are too predictable, unfortunately people will turn away from it. It's a sad truth that if a concept is used too much or too often, people will lose interest in it. Sorry, shame. Yes, indeed, there are many people who are turned off from a story just because of this aspect, but it is what it is. Do your best to be as original as possible with your ideas, and it doesn't hurt to have a couple cliches in there. They can be fun. You can subvert expectations, but honestly, nowadays, the more cliche thing to do is to try and subvert your expectations too much. Just do what you know best. Do your best to write good and interesting characters, and that should be good enough to carry your characters through. And of course, don't forget, keep them consistent. Because, of course, any inconsistencies will tend to make your world fall apart. Speaking of inconsistencies, plot holes. Oh boy, these are the world building pillars. These things will destroy your story if you're not careful. Perfect example is the Transformers films. Oh my. Now I love these films. I love the mechanical aspects to the characters. I love how they transform and turn and all these little details in the CGI and just how well it holds up is fantastic. The story's kind of bad though, isn't it? Like, oh my. For starters, the Constructicons in the second film just appear out of nowhere after being killed a bunch of times. They're used as generic cannon fodder, but it doesn't work when it's the same CGI models. Each design's supposed to be different and unique from one another's, but it doesn't make sense when the same 5 guys are being killed over and over again. And arguably the biggest plot hole is Bumblebee fought in World War II. But we see him land on Earth in the early 2000s, which is presumably the first time they land on Earth. And yet we're supposed to believe they've been on the Earth for hundreds of thousands of years. And the constant rewriting of ancient history being turned into Transformers history, it's very confusing. And it doesn't make any sense at all. Megatron turning into Galvatron, and then Galvatron becoming Megatron again out of nowhere doesn't make any sense. And while some people might say he just transformed into Megatron again, he never uses that Transformium transformation he has from Age of Extinction. So, why? How does that make any sense? Well, the answer is it doesn't. It really doesn't. But they threw it in there because they could anyways. There's constant rewrites, constant changes. Apparently, Transformers have been on the Earth for thousands of years out of nowhere. They keep changing the story because, well, they want to. And that's the problem. If you don't plan out how your story comes together and plan out all the chronological events and just keep adding things on and hoping it works out, it tends to tear your story apart. That's why Lord of the Rings works so well. That's why Harry Potter works so well. These ideas were planned out from the start, or at least somewhat planned out. A chronological order of events, ideas that were already being formed and made sure to connect back to prior events so that they didn't contradict each other. If you want an example other than Transformers that absolutely tears its story apart, look no further than Stranger Things. First season, perfect. No complaints. It was well done, but it's very clear they didn't plan for the show to run as much as they did. And over time, it becomes more and more clear that they just throw new things in there out of nowhere. You can tell just how Marvelized it's become. Yeah, we're going there. Just senseless CGI monsters, nonsense, super bright lighting, nonsensical monsters and characters with plot armor out of the wazoo. Oh my goodness. You would not believe how many times a Demogorgon can kick a man to death, but will just lightly brush a main character aside. Ugh. It's absolutely nauseating to watch because it hurts the story so much. They tried to return to form before the end, but then again, they just kind of threw it away at the very end. They had a wonderful setup at the last seasons, but they threw it away. And that's the main issue here. You keep destroying your stories by changing things at the last minute or adding on to things without making a full plan beforehand. If you didn't plan for something to go on as long as you did, throwing in a character like Vecna or just marvelizing the villain doesn't work. And to give it a generic happy ending where 99.9% of the characters everybody cares about survives doesn't make an interesting story. There's no stakes there. There's nothing. It throws the story apart just to continue it on for a little bit longer and make a little bit more money. It doesn't help your story, it just wrecks it and ruins it and tears it apart. You gotta have a plan, chronological order, history events that tie into the storyline, consistent characters that don't destroy themselves, and of course, let's not forget, no retcons. Because you can have minor retcons if you're doing a long enough story, or you can change events that don't work for you. But if you are doing something like Sauron's not the bad guy, he's actually the good guy, how are you going to convince your audience that's the case? They have decades of writing books, everything. that are against this. If you have prior knowledge against something and go against that completely, it doesn't work for your story. For example, let's say your villain is an evil warlock or something, just a horrible human being, and they just let the hero survive, or they don't follow them somewhere, or they don't go to a certain place for no reason. There's no reason given as to why they can't go, and it doesn't make any sense. That tears apart your story. That's the main issue here. Consistently destroying your world, your characters, and audience interest is going to tear apart your storytelling capabilities, and it means nobody's going to care, or everyone's going to tear it apart and care a lot, but not in a way that you want. Rings of Power, Stranger Things, list goes on. The Marvel Cinematic Universe, Willow, that TV show that was only up for I want to say a couple months. They tore these things apart because of how much you destroyed the characters and changed them. How much you went against the world that was already pre-established, the characters they knew, the logic that was there, the plot holes that you created, and just tore them apart further. The only thing to blame is bad writing, or writing that hasn't properly integrated itself into the world's logic. I'm giving examples from popular internet content because honestly nowadays I don't really watch that many shows. In fact, I don't watch any at all. I don't bother to because, well, books are more interesting to me. And if you want to read things, I suggest Sherlock Holmes, Lord of the Rings, heck, even a Dungeons & Dragons monster manual is more fun nowadays. Just try reading new things. Try expanding past the horizon of just television and series and try to find things that are more interesting and fun. And another thing, if you don't like a show, try dissecting what you don't like about it. Try looking into the things you don't enjoy about that show. Me personally, I do it through this means. I talk about what doesn't work for me, what doesn't make sense in the world's logic, and what absolutely kills my interest for things. I talk about how to better do that, how to take away that problem, and how to fix it. That's what I enjoy doing. If you enjoy watching televisions or series or reading books, try dissecting what you like and dislike about it. Make your own critiques. Critique does not have to be a bad thing, and that's my final point. When listening to criticism, listening to everyone is not a good idea. Because sometimes people will just say, your idea sucks, my idea is great. That's it. No. And ignoring everyone is equivalently a bad idea. What you have to do is listen and choose for yourself. Does this make sense or does it not make sense? Just needlessly and blindly listening to people doesn't work. You have to think about what people are saying, compare it and contrast with what you know, and go, oh, does this make sense? Yeah, I guess it does make sense. And then you continue on from there. In my book series, The Lands of Fastergan, I'm doing my best to take all of my writing knowledge and all that I continue learning from watching, reading, and absorbing content, and I try to put it to good use in my story. I talk about characters and monsters, and I do my best to make a fully thought out world. And if you want to learn more about my writing and want to learn more about what I've learned about writing and my own opinions, then check out our website. I actually have a blog that talks about this exact subject. Well, I enjoy talking about the things that I've learned and the things that I'm working on. So if you would like to learn more about the things that I'm working on, if you would like to support me and my work and support these videos, then please consider donating or helping us in any way. Dropping a like on the videos and subscribing or following does a lot for us. Seriously, it is a huge help. So if you enjoy what I do, or you're enjoying this weird wizard man talking about his shows and TV and books and what he's working on, then please continue to support me, or just consider dropping a follow or a like. Anything that you do, even watching the video, is highly appreciated. So thank you all for taking the time to spend your time watching this video, and I'll see you later.